They told you that marijuana makes you lazy, kills motivation, clouds judgment, and turns the mind into an endless fog. But what if all of that was the biggest lie of all? What if the plant you were taught to despise, mock, or use casually was actually here to awaken you, not sedate you? The truth is, cannabis was not meant to be smoked under fluorescent lights while endlessly scrolling through your phone feed. It was meant to be burned under the stars, in silence, in ceremony. A misunderstood plant, misused by most, yet sacred to the ancients. A messenger, a bridge between the human and the divine. Today, we reveal how to use it the way it was intended. Not to escape, but for vision. Not to numb, but to awaken. The ritual of Thoth was never lost. It was hidden, waiting patiently for the right moment. Think about this. You probably never questioned how your body reacts to cannabis, the softening of thought, the expanded perception, time seeming to bend, colors appearing more vivid. You called it high, a trip, a buzz. But what if it's something entirely different, something your body was designed to experience? Modern science, quietly, has confirmed what mystics have whispered for millennia. Your brain has a system made to respond to cannabis. Not alcohol, not caffeine, not any other substance. Only this plant. Cannabinoid receptors, tiny molecular doors spread throughout the brain and nervous system. Not evolutionary accidents. They are precise, intentional, like locks waiting for the right key. And cannabis is that key. Ask yourself, why would your body be programmed to receive something so naturally abundant and produced by the earth? Why would your mind flourish under its influence exactly as ancient texts describe enlightenment, divine vision, and ego dissolution? In ancient India, the Vedas called cannabis Vijaya, the conqueror of suffering. In Egypt, it was the green messenger. In the Bible, hidden in plain sight, it was part of the sacred anointing oil. These were not metaphors, they were instructions. Because this plant doesn't just alter perception, it lifts the veil. But the world you were born into does not want the veils removed. It prefers you remain comfortable, sedated, misinformed. So, they told you cannabis was dangerous, useless, rebellious. They turned its users into jokes and sacred medicine into contraband, not because the plant is weak, but because it is too powerful. You were never taught to use it correctly. Because if you were, you might begin asking real questions about reality, about yourself, about what this world truly is, and why so many lie asleep within it. There is a reason why ancient civilizations approached cannabis with reverence. They did not use it to numb the mind, but to sharpen inner vision. They prepared with prayer, breathing, and silence. They knew the plant is a spiritual amplifier, capable of elevating or undoing, depending on the state you bring to it. Cannabis does not give visions. It removes the blocks that prevent visions. This is why such knowledge was buried, not destroyed, just hidden beneath centuries of ridicule and misinformation. Because if you knew what this plant could truly do, if you approached it not as a drug but as a guide, you would begin to see through social, cultural, and emotional illusions. You would awaken, and awakening is dangerous for those who profit from your sleep. Discoveries about Thoth's original ritual are so sensitive they cannot fit into a public video. But there is a truth that can be shared. Cannabis only becomes a haze when you bring haze to it. When approached with consciousness, sacred breathing, and silence, it becomes clarity. It reveals what was hidden in plain sight. The ancient priests of Egypt knew this. That's why they burned it, surrounded temples with incense and silence, focusing on glyphs carved in stone, symbols that, under influence, began to glow, move, and reveal hidden meanings. Not hallucinations, but spiritual activation. They were not high, they were clear. This is what we are revealing. how those temple rituals worked, how Thoth's breathing pattern opens a forgotten part of the mind, and why, even today, this ritual still works if you are willing to approach the plant with pure intention and reverence, not casually. Before cannabis became a commodity, before it was entangled in politics, profit, and paranoia, it was sacred across continents and centuries. It was never seen as an escape. It was a bridge, a living tool of connection. Everywhere you look, if you know what to seek, this truth was encoded in forgotten cultures, ancient texts, and mystical traditions. Once you begin to see, it is everywhere. In the Vedas of India, cannabis was known as Vijaya, not just a plant, but a divine gift used to dissolve the ego and become one with the cosmic force. During the Shivaratri festivals, devotees drank bhang, not for pleasure, but to loosen the limited self, soften the walls of the ego, and touch the divine. They were not high, they were awake. The same truths echo in ancient Egypt. Priests offered strange flowering plants alongside the eye of Horus and the lotus, prepared alchemical mixtures that included cannabis, blue lotus, frankincense, and myrrh. Not by accident, but by design. The smoke was not merely aromatic, it was a tool of spiritual activation, opening portals to the duat, the realm between worlds, where the soul glimpses its own reflection, and where Thoth said he resided. The so-called green messenger was not a metaphor. It was cannabis used to activate the eye of Horus, the third eye, which does not just see reality, but sees through it. Even the Bible does not escape this forgotten lineage. In Exodus 30:23, the mention of can bosom is interpreted by scholars as a reference to cannabis used in sacred anointing oils. Applied to the skin and inhaled in rituals, these preparations aligned the person with divine will, opening perception and attuning the soul. But the world chose to bury this knowledge. The church called it heresy, governments called it crime, corporations called it useless. Still, the truth survived, whispered from generation to generation, hidden in folk traditions, Rastafarian chants, and silent moments of seekers who, without a map, discovered that cannabis could awaken consciousness. Think about it. Cultures separated by centuries and continents all stumbled upon the same truth. This plant, when used with reverence, opens doors in the mind. It tunes you to frequencies beyond ordinary perception, not by magic, but by design. You were taught that cannabis is a personal vice. But what if it has always been a global sacrament? And what if the real reason for its suppression was not laziness, but because it makes you conscious, questioning, awake? Tracing the lineage of sacred use, a pattern emerges. A plant used by priests, prophets, and sages, later criminalized and ridiculed. A substance that calms the ego and awakens perception, banned in a world built on control, conformity, and blind productivity. This is not just historical curiosity. It is an ancient message, still alive. This plant was not made for profit, it was made for revelation. Those who remember this, who treat it with the respect it once commanded, can still access what the ancients knew. The lineage was never lost, just forgotten until now. There is a reason Thoth did not deliver this ritual to just anyone. There is a reason priests spent years in training before touching the green smoke. Because the plant is only half the key. The other half, almost always forgotten, is breathing. Not just breathing, but intentional, patterned, rhythmic, directed breathing, like a current of energy flowing through the entire nervous system. See, cannabis interacts with the endocannabinoid system. Yes, but that is only the entry point. What truly transforms your state is how the energy flows within you after the plant enters your body. And Thoth understood this deeply. That is why his ritual was not just smoking. It was preparing the body, unlocking a higher state, guiding energy through the spine, the lungs, the third eye. And for that, you need conscious breathing. Now we understand what the ancients already knew. Your breath controls your reality. Shallow breathing keeps you anxious, trapped in the mind. Deep, deliberate breathing transforms you. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system responsible for peace, openness, and inner stillness. Add cannabis to this state, and something remarkable happens. Not chaos, not confusion, but clarity. This is where the activation of the 7 breaths begins. The ritual starts with silence. No lights, no distractions, just you, your breath, and the green messenger. You do not throw yourself into the smoke, nor light it casually with a wandering mind and a phone in hand. You approach it as if it were a door, because that is exactly what it is. You sit in silence and inhale deeply, not the smoke yet, but the air. Draw it slowly through your nose, feeling it cool the passages, expand your ribs, fill your abdomen. Hold for a moment, long enough to notice the pause between inhale and exhale. Then exhale slowly through your mouth, like mist rolling down a mountain. This pattern, slow inhale, brief retention, long exhale, is repeated 7 times. Why 7? Because in the Egyptian spiritual system, 7 was the number of the completion of ascension. It aligns with the 7 energy centers, the 7 heavens, the 7 stages of alchemical transformation. With each breath, something changes. Your body slows down, your mind calms, your senses sharpen. You become the observer, not just the thinker. Only then do you introduce the plant. A slow draw, held not to the point of discomfort, but at the edge of stillness, then released with intention. And again, you sit. You let the wave pass through you, without control, without attachment, simply observing. What follows is not always dramatic. Perhaps you will not have spectacular visions or lightning running down your spine. Sometimes, the most powerful thing cannabis does is reveal the silence beneath your thoughts, the space between them. And in that space, something awakens, an ancient memory, forgotten knowledge, or a question you have always feared to ask. This is where the eye of Horus begins to open, not because the plant is magical, but because your system was prepared to receive it. You are not using cannabis to escape. You are using it to remember who you truly are. And when you combine sacred breath with conscious intention, you become the temple. Your body becomes the altar, the smoke the incense, the breath the chant. This is why Thoth's ritual worked, and still works today. Because it is not a recipe to follow, it is a state of being, a way to approach yourself with reverence instead of restlessness. Most people use the plant seeking entertainment, but when you slow down, truly slow down, and approach with intention, something changes. The plant meets you differently. It does not flood you with distractions. It clears what does not belong. And in that clarity, you see things that have been buried for a long time, not because they did not exist, but because you were not ready. Being ready, however, is not about mastering the plant. It is about mastering yourself. This ritual is not complicated, but it demands sincerity, not performance, not perfection, only presence. It asks, will you show up for your own awakening, or will you continue treating the sacred casually? Because the truth is, the plant remembers and responds to the energy you bring. Bring haste, and you will encounter confusion. Bring stillness, and it will open you. In the next section, we will explore what happens when the plant opens more than you expect, when visions intensify, or the veil becomes too thin. Why some people see demons, and how, if that happens, it might be the most important lesson you have ever received. You have probably heard stories. Someone tries cannabis for the first time, or perhaps the 100th, and the experience is different. The laughter fades, music sounds strange, the room seems distorted, and suddenly fear arises, panic, perhaps even darkness. But this, if you pay attention, is not a threat. It is the plant showing the boundary between who you are and who you could become. Some say they saw things, felt things, heard ancient whispers, not the easy laughter or exaggerated hunger that people associate with cannabis. something deeper, something ancestral, and they swear, "I saw a demon." But what if it was not a bad trip? What if that was the point? The ancients never used cannabis casually. They fasted before rituals, they prayed. They purified themselves, not out of superstition, but because they understood something we forget. The plant does not show you what you want, it shows you what you need. And sometimes what you need is to confront your own shadow. Every mystical tradition in the world, from Tibetan Buddhism to Amazonian shamanism, agrees on one thing. The world you see under altered states is not random. It reflects your inner world, not always directly, not as a mirror, but as a dream shaped by your deepest truths and fears. The Tibetan Book of the Dead calls this state Bardo, a place between death and rebirth, where the mind manifests its attachments, regrets, desires, and fears all at once. Amazonian shamans say, the spirits you meet in ayahuasca are attracted by your frequency. They are not outside of you. They are echoes of what is unresolved within. Cannabis, when used ritualistically, opens the same door, only in a quieter, subtler way. And if you are not ready, if you have buried pain, guilt, or hidden truths, you may not see light. You may see everything you have avoided. Not because the plant is dark, but because you have turned away from the darkness within yourself. The demon that some swear they see is not an enemy. It is the part of you that waits to be seen. There is a reason why some of the deepest spiritual initiations include confrontation with fear. Because fear, when unexamined, controls you. It governs your choices, poisons your relationships, whispers limits in your dreams. But fear, when faced, becomes a portal. It transforms into insight, power, healing. And cannabis, when used consciously, can bring this fear to the surface, not to punish, but to free you. That is why intention matters. That is why space matters. That is why preparation is everything. When the ancients entered a ritual with cannabis, they did not merely set intentions. They created protective containers, circles of salt around the space, chants to elevate frequency, breath to stabilize the nervous system. Even the symbols carved into the walls were anchors of divinity. Even today, you can protect your experience. Ground yourself with salt. In many traditions, salt is purifying, a boundary between the physical and astral. Use specific sounds, sulfuric frequencies or tonal chants to stabilize your state. These are not esoteric tricks. They are ancestral technologies, tools the ego discards, but the soul remembers. If fear arises, do not flee, do not suppress. Ask, why is it here? What does it want to show? Every difficult journey carries a truth your conscious mind did not want to face. Cannabis, unlike most psychedelics, allows a gentle return. It does not throw you into chaos. It invites you to enter. And it gives you a choice, resist or see. This is the sacred mirror, the moment when the effect becomes sacred, when it is no longer about what you feel, but about what you are finally willing to feel. This is why ancient cultures did not separate medicine from mysticism, because healing was never purely physical, it was spiritual. And cannabis, in its true essence, was never a party drug. It revealed truths. But to receive this truth, you must listen. And to listen, you must be quiet enough to hear through the noise of your own mind. Close your eyes, think of your last experience with cannabis, or perhaps the first. Ask yourself, what was vibrating in that space? Music, noise, silence? Everything that vibrated filled the air and shaped your perception. Cannabis does not respond only to thoughts. It responds to sound. You have probably felt this without understanding. How one piece of music can elevate the experience while another destroys it. How certain frequencies can make the effect warm, euphoric, visionary, or how a harsh sound can pull you into anxiety. This is not coincidence, it is resonance. The ancients knew this. In ancient Kemet, the Egypt, the high priests used sound as alchemists use fire to transmute energy, influence the body, harmonize the nervous system. Cannabis and deep tonal chants were not ambience or decoration. They activated the body as an instrument, awakening natural frequencies and aligning the mind with divinity. Hieroglyphs show priests in rows, lips parted, arms raised. This was not casual music. They were sound codes, intonations designed to vibrate the skull and vagus nerve, synchronizing body, mind, and spirit. Today, we call this brainwave entrainment. Frequencies between 432 and 528 Hz slow the brain from beta to alpha or theta. Trance states, expanded perception. Cannabis accelerates this shift, making the mind more receptive and porous. The Rastafarians, often ridiculed, practice this intuitively. Chants, drums, call and response, all inherited from African Sufi and Vedic traditions. Every rhythm is intentional, not entertainment, ritual. Repeating names or mantras under the influence of cannabis is not superstition, it is entrainment. A tuning fork for consciousness, a structure that guides the experience instead of drowning in it. Most people do not notice this. They treat cannabis as an isolated act, but it is a duet, breath, space, sound. Random playlists lead to fragmented experiences. Sacred silence can be more powerful than any music because your mind absorbs every vibration. Every lyric, every sound, every pulse becomes a suggestion to the nervous system. The question remains, which frequencies are you allowing into your sacred space? If you wish to use the plant as Thoth did, not to escape, but for revelation, you must choose sound as you would choose a guide, carefully, intentionally, with respect. It could be Gregorian chants, throat singing, sulfuric tones pulsing at 432 Hz. The genre does not matter. What matters is the energy, the support of stillness, the sustaining of space, not filling it. Cannabis does not create visions. It reveals the ones that already exist. But to see them clearly, the space must be clean, internally and externally. Sound is the most powerful tool to clear and guide the mind where it has never dared to go. When Thoth's priests lit the incense and inhaled the green smoke, they sang, hummed, vibrated. They became instruments because they knew cannabis opens the door, but sound decides what passes through it. And now, this knowledge is returning. In the next part, we will explore the greatest misunderstanding, why most people use cannabis casually, and why intention is what determines whether the plant heals or tests you. Cannabis is not neutral. It amplifies, reflects, reveals. And what it reveals depends on how you enter that space. Ancient cultures did not use it daily, nor for trivial reasons. They treated it like fire, capable of warming or burning, depending on how it is handled. The modern mistake is not excess, it is lack of respect, not moral but metaphysical. You are inviting a spiritual technology into your body, mind, and energy field. Using it casually is like opening a portal without protection. Some plunge into paranoia, apathy, or addiction, not because cannabis is bad, but because they approached it as a toy, not a tool. Imagine using a scalpel as a spoon. That is what happens when it is smoked to numb. The plant does not erase pain, it teaches through it. It reveals patterns you avoid, and if you are not ready, the effect becomes heavy. The ancients knew this. They prepared with fasting, bathing, silence, not superstition, but purification. South American shamans cleanse the body before ceremony to remove energetic residue, making the body receptive to true perception. Thoth's priests did the same. The body alters perception. The plant does not work alone. When you approach with clarity and purpose, something different happens. The smoke does not cloud thoughts, it separates them. The effect does not spiral, it ascends. The messages become clear. The body light, the mind quiet, the vision undeniable. Then ask, what energy are you bringing when you use cannabis? Seeking truth or escape? Asking questions or trying to silence answers already within you? The plant will find you where you are, but it will always ask you to go further. Tonight, if you feel called, do not just light up. Sit, breathe. Ask aloud, what do I need to see? Then listen, not with your ears, but with your body. You may not receive words, but images, feelings, sensations of something unfinished, asking for resolution. This is the beginning of the ritual, the plant doing its true work, not as a drug, but as a guide. It is not how much you smoke, it is how deeply you listen. And that is why, in all traditions that used cannabis as sole medicine, there were limits: temple, circle, chant, fire. Not restrictions, but sacred containers. The plant's power requires structure, otherwise it spreads. And when sacred medicine spreads without intention, it becomes common, loses meaning, becomes background noise in an already noisy life. So next time you take cannabis, pause and ask yourself, am I entering the temple or just lighting a wick? The answer will determine everything that follows. In the next section, we will reveal what modern institutions tried to hide. How the CIA and secret programs, like Project Stargate, discovered that cannabis, when used correctly, did not numb perception, but expanded it beyond space and time. You were taught that cannabis makes you slow, confused, forgetful, a plant for the lazy or lost. But behind closed doors, away from public view, some of the world's most powerful intelligence agencies were conducting experiments. Tests so strange they seem like science fiction. And the truth they discovered broke the official narrative. During the Cold War, in a desperate race for psychic superiority, the CIA launched a classified operation called Project Stargate. It was not just espionage, but unlocking untapped human potential. Remote viewing, telepathy, altered states, all investigated under the pretext of national security. And within these shadowed corridors, cannabis reached the participants' hands. But it was not used recreationally. It was administered in low, precise, controlled doses, observed and documented. What they discovered challenged everything they had been taught. Subjects under the influence of cannabis began describing places they had never visited: military bases, foreign offices, underground bunkers, details that later matched reconnaissance photos. Sketches made while under the influence resembled structures in places never seen. This was not imagination. It was expanded perception. Perception not limited to the five senses, but open, wide, deep, distant. While psychedelics like LSD drew attention, cannabis entered tests quietly because of its unique profile. It does not violently dissolve the ego. It does not distort the mind beyond function. It sharpens intuition, gently fine-tunes the veil. If the participant was trained, calm, and focused, they could remain anchored to the body while expanding consciousness outward, like a kite floating beyond the clouds, still observing, still present. Why has this never been revealed? Because if you knew that cannabis expands consciousness instead of suppressing it, you would start asking questions that do not serve the system. Questions like, why was this plant made illegal in the first place? Why were its spiritual uses erased while alcohol and opiates were glamorized? Why were indigenous uses criminalized and later secretly appropriated? You see, the real war on drugs was not against substances. It was against perception, consciousness, tools that could help you step out of the machine and see the mechanisms of control. And cannabis, when used ritualistically, with sacred breath and focused mind, can do exactly that, but not in the way most expect. It does not give visions like a psychedelic, but it tunes consciousness, amplifies subtleties, reveals patterns previously ignored, shows energy where none was felt before, and allows perception of the interconnection between thoughts, body, and surrounding space. If you ask the right question, the plant responds, "What am I missing?" This single question, under ideal conditions, has led people to break addictions, leave toxic relationships, reveal hidden traumas, awaken dormant psychic faculties. Because cannabis does not hold answers, it creates space, a space where your deepest self, your higher knowledge, your inner guide can finally be heard. And this terrified the agencies funding these programs. Because how do you control a population that sees through propaganda, questioning not only the media, but the very metaphysics of reality? So the findings were buried, documents censored, and cannabis pushed back into the shadows. Not because it didn't work, but because it worked too well. And here we are again, on the verge of revelation. The knowledge is resurfacing. And this time, it is not trapped in laboratories. It is in your hands. The ritual is not hidden. The breath is free. The plant still grows, and the door, it is still open. In the next part, we will explore the ancient origins of this sacred use. From Egypt to the Vedas to the Bible, cannabis has always been a tool of revelation, and we will show how its modern perception is the greatest disinformation campaign never fully questioned. Before it was criminalized, before the stoner jokes, propaganda films, and the war on drugs, cannabis had another name: sacrament. Not in one culture, not in one religion, but in nearly all ancient traditions, spanning continents and centuries. It was never meant to be consumed unconsciously, in alleys or closed doors. It was burned in temples, infused in oils, prepared in sacred teas, not to numb but to awaken. In ancient India, the Vedas, millennia-old sacred texts, called cannabis Vijaya, meaning victory, one of Shiva's favorite herbs used to conquer suffering and elevate consciousness. The Atharva Vedas listed it among the 5 most sacred plants on earth. Mixed with milk and spices, it became bhang, consumed not to escape, but to unite with the divine. Across the sea, the ancient Egyptians had their own rituals. Ground cannabis was used as sacred incense in the temples of Thoth, god of wisdom and magic. He received divine visions, communicated with higher realms, and guided souls through the duat, the Egyptian underworld. Engravings show priests holding flowering plants beside braziers, smoke rising in ritual chants under the starry sky. These were not metaphors, they were instructions, and the Bible also holds hidden traces. In Exodus 30:23, God instructs Moses to create a sacred anointing oil using kane bosom, a mysterious Hebrew term now associated with cannabis. This oil prepared the body as a vessel for the spirit. Without it, you were not holy. You were activated through it. Somehow, all of this was erased. Centuries of colonization, cultural erasure, and institutional control rewrote the narrative. Cannabis was no longer sacred. It was sinful. Church, state, and academia had vested interest in ensuring the power of this plant was forgotten. Because if the masses knew they could access perception, vision, and peace without authority, they would stop seeking external control and turn inward. What was once a global sacrament became a silent rebellion. Still, the wisdom never completely died. It hid in symbols, stories, underground rituals, passed from seeker to seeker. And now it is resurfacing, not in laboratories, not in governments, but through curious, questioning people ready to remember what they should never have forgotten. Because cannabis is not just a plant, it is a bridge between hemispheres of the brain, dimensions of reality, between the self you were told to be and the self you truly are. When used with reverence, it does more than alter the mind. It reintroduces you to your own soul. But reverence requires more than knowledge. It requires embodiment, intention, and a willingness to treat your own mind as sacred soil. And as we reach the end of this journey, remember, what you were told about cannabis is a story designed to limit you. Now that you have seen behind the curtain, you hold the pen. You can write the next chapter. In the final part, we will show how to unify everything, breath, sound, environment, and the question into a single ritual you can practice tonight. Because awakening does not happen in theory, it happens in practice. Tonight, the veil is thin, not just metaphorically, but energetically. The ancients believed that certain moments, especially under specific lunar alignments, carried more intensity, more openness. And when you combine that openness with intention, breath, and the right tool, something profound unlocks. For many of them, that tool was cannabis, but not in the way most imagine. It's not about rolling a joint and scrolling your phone feed. It's not about escaping reality, but entering it more fully. Tonight, if you choose, it can be a portal. But like any portal, it requires a key. The key is presence, preparation, and the willingness to see without distortion. This is the ritual that the initiates of Thoth's temple would recognize, not by name, but by rhythm, by spirit, by stillness. A process of awakening that begins not in smoke, but in breath. The activation of the 7 steps of breath is not complicated, but it is powerful. With each breath, you are not just inhaling oxygen, you are sending a signal to your nervous system that something different is happening, that this moment is sacred, that it is not about getting high, but about aligning. Breathe slowly through the nose, hold, exhale gently through the mouth, repeat 7 times, let your shoulders drop, let your thoughts slow down. With each breath, mental noise fades, static dissipates, the body calms. Only then should you light the herb. Use less than you think you need. This is not about quantity, but direction. Think of the smoke as a messenger, a thread. Inhale gently, and as the vapor enters, ask a silent, sincere question. What do I need to see? Exhale and listen. Not with your ears, but with your whole being. At first, it may seem like nothing is happening. That's okay. Most people are so trained to chase stimuli that they miss the subtleties. But the plant does not shout. It whispers. It nudges gently. A feeling may arise, a memory, an image, a sudden perception you didn't expect. Let it come. Do not chase it. Just sit and observe. Let the ritual unfold. Light a candle if you have one. Dim the lights. Let the darkness embrace you, not scare you. Play soft sounds, vibrational music, ancient chants, or even silence. Sound matters. It anchors the journey, holds the ritual space. The ancients understood that frequency is not decoration, it is navigation. And cannabis, when combined with the right tones, takes you deeper than smoke alone ever could. You may cry, you may laugh, you may feel as if you have entered a dream within another dream. Let it be as it is. Do not try to shape it. The ritual does not respond to control, it responds to surrender. And when it ends, when visions dissipate and your breath returns, sit a little longer. Write in a journal, stretch, thank the plant aloud. This simple act seals the space. It reminds your psyche that what just happened was real, valuable, sacred, because without reverence, all rituals become routine. But with reverence, even the smallest act becomes a door. What you saw, felt, remembered, or perceived tonight was not random. It was made for you, not as entertainment, not as escape, but as a key to a deeper version of yourself that has been patiently waiting to be remembered. Cannabis did not put this wisdom there. It helped you discover what was already inside you. And that is the point. This ritual is not about the plant, it is about your awakening. Cannabis is only a path, a tool. But when used with humility, precision, and intention, it becomes a mirror for the soul. And once you see clearly, you cannot unsee. The world does not change, but the way you walk through it does. If you never touch the plant again, let this night be a reminder of your power to choose, to see, and to transform. And if you continue walking with the green messenger, may it always be with care, breath, and a question, because that is what keeps the ritual alive. If you've made it this far, it's because something deep inside you is calling for more, for a purer truth, a sharper awareness, and a more intimate connection with the unseen force that gives shape to the visible. And now, I want to share with you something that will expand your consciousness even further. Get ready to take the next step. I present to you the Map of the Higher Self, a powerful e-book born from my most intense and authentic experiences. It brings together practices, insights, and mental keys that will guide you on a path of clarity, presence, and inner awakening. But it doesn't stop there. When you get the book, you'll also receive free access to the Sacred Library, an exclusive digital collection of rare, forbidden works removed from our history, hidden texts that reveal what has been concealed from humanity for centuries and is now within your reach. This map is not just a book, it's a tool for transformation. If you've arrived here, it's no accident. This is a sign. You're ready to elevate your perception and take control of your own reality. Click the link in the pinned comment and dive into this journey of self-knowledge with courage, focus, and awareness. And don't stop here. I've handpicked 2 essential videos that will expand even further everything we explored today. Choose one and keep exploring the deeper layers of your being. Remember, the truth is not found in the noise of the world, but in the silent voice of awakening consciousness.